All right. Welcome back to Draws and Fades, episode 120, preview of the Waste Management Phoenix Open in Scottsdale, Arizona. I'm your host, Owen Vrabel, joined by my co-host, Matthew Miller.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back.
Welcome back, boys. This is a podcast sponsored by Rotoballer. We'll get into it a little bit last week. We're done with the rotational tournaments with all different types of courses, but Justin Rose did win the AT&T Pro-Am. Feel a little bit guilty for not letting Matt remove him from his blacklist last week. Sorry about that, Matt. We will get into the course preview for what feels like the start of the best part of the PGA Tour season at TPC Scottsdale. Get into the odds list on FanDuel. Most of the top 25 players in the world are here. First elevated event of the year, really minus the live guys and Will Zalatoris, which maybe we'll touch on for a bit. Everyone's here. So top 10s, top 20s. One and done thoughts at the end, and a little special Super Bowl bets with notorious Eagles fan Matty Mills. So big week. It's the best. This is one of the best weeks of the year, honestly.
Yeah.
And I'll preface it with saying rolling into a Super Bowl party or being at a Super Bowl party and hitting the winner at the Waste Management Phoenix Open is just an electric feeling. You feel like you're free rolling for the whole day.
Yeah.
Probably fired off some last minute prop bets. You're just feeling good. So this tournament's great. I love TPC Scottsdale. Great field, like we mentioned. Obviously, we're missing some of our live guys. We'll get into Brooks Koepka being here this week. We've hit a big bet on him here before. We've had great success at the Phoenix Open. Great to be back. How you feeling?
And feel great. Like you touched on, this is probably aside from the Super Bowl that it rolls into and the fact that we've had success at this event. It's one of our favorite events of the year. The course is awesome. The event's awesome. The atmosphere is awesome. And like you said, I mean, you hit a winner here and you're expecting to, throw a lot of stupid prop bets in the Super Bowl. But when you have that, golf outright winner money in your back pocket, you can get really crazy with the Super Bowl bets. This year, my Eagles are going to be playing, so it's going to be like an absolutely crazy day. I'm hoping for an outright winner and then the Eagles to win the Super Bowl. That would be about the perfect Sunday.
There you go. Yeah, you can't beat that. Teams at the Super Bowl. Phoenix Open is a lead-in, is always great. It's just great. It's a beautiful time to be a golf fan too. I think this is a kind of a transitioning point for a lot of football fans to get back into watching golf. I mean, I'm hoping for their sake that they didn't have to watch too much of last week's tournament. Just horrific. I mean, delays after delays. And then, we had Keith Mitchell in the mix, which would have been nice, but just so disjointed. And, those tournaments suck with the tough to track your players on Monterey and Spyglass. You're tracking how each portion of the field is doing as they go through the week. So Keith was in his rotation of the courses playing as good as anyone. Then his day got a little broken up there on Sunday and Saturday. And so you just never really get. But Justin Rose, that was impressive. I mean, he closed his third round on Sunday in impressive form and then led that into his Sunday round and then finished it off on Monday. So credit to him. Sorry for talking you off that. Still think that the odds weren't great, but he proved me wrong. So,
yeah, I mean, it's my fault ultimately. I mean, I wasn't totally in on him. So I paid the price. I picked Scott Stallings instead. That obviously probably isn't going to happen moving forward. But what are you gonna do? I will say
you're not gonna pick Scott Stallings over Rose again.
No, I will not pick Scott Stallings over Rose again. I will say that on one bright side of this past weekend, Abe Spencer got it done over at the Saudi International there.
100%. The draws and fades
in the Asian Tour event. Yeah. Draws and fades. We had him on the podcast. 2 starts later, he goes and wins. So all I'm saying is any golfers in a slump out there, I think we kind of have a way for you to get back in the winner's circle.
Yep. And I mean, it's funny because we talked to him about, official world golf ranking points. He mentioned his buddies Ortiz, Neiman as like dark horses to win majors and stuff, but how, all of them really need to gain points when they can to make sure that they'll be able to play. He has himself a couple of exemptions, but that win is huge. He's now back inside the top 30 in official world golf rankings. Hopefully will clear him to be able to play in the U.S. Open. And yeah, big thing for Abe. And people can talk shit on Liv all they want, but I mean, that field was more legitimate than the AT&T Pro-Am field for sure. And, one of the PGA Tour's rising stars, Cam Young, was right there. And we'll see what his career holds. But obviously I feel weird about him because he's in the Zalatoris territory for now where, he hasn't been able to figure out a way to get it done when it matters. Even though he's so good at pretty much everything except for, I mean, you mentioned it. I didn't watch any of it, so except for like the final few holes. So the his putting is a concern, as you mentioned.
The putting. He missed a couple of short ones that I guess it was hole, I don't know, I want to say like 15 or something, and he had like a par putt that he missed. He was down like 1 and he missed a par putt. That was not like a terrible miss. I mean, he was probably like a 10-footer. And then he had like a 3 on the back, pretty much a tap in for bogey. He missed that. And it was at that point.
You're cutting in and out here, but I think we got your point. Xfinity, dude. We need to get their shit together.
Xfinity is really killing me. This has been I thought I cleared these issues up, and apparently I didn't.
The audio is not horrible, but obviously visually you're like choppy, but I think we're okay. If it gets worse, we'll figure it out. But yeah, anyway, I mean, it would have been nice to hit a Keith Mitchell ticket on Monday, but he couldn't really close the door. Rose played great. I'm trying to think of really any other stories of note. I will say that my quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, is a fucking sandbagger, which is not great. I don't know how he played to a 10 handicap, but that Pro-Am is now a joke. So he, just a bad look for him, really. But Keith Mitchell was really the only one who called him out. I mean, Josh Allen too, which is Keith Mitchell's partner, but I mean, I don't know how they determined that was fair, but it's interesting, and I don't really care to get to the bottom of it because he might not be my quarterback for much longer. So we'll see. In terms of football storylines, the Super Bowl is a bigger story. So, but Aaron Rodgers did win the Pro-Am, so good for him. So AT&T Pro-Am behind us. Those rotational type events are now behind us as well. And like I said at the beginning, this feels like the start of a lot of meaningful golf, and we'll get to play a lot of great courses, should have great fields. It's the first elevated event. It's exciting to get into. Perfect week to get into it, right into the Super Bowl. And honestly, the last couple of years, I mean, there's been some great Sunday drama. We had 3 years in a row with a playoff, and then we had a playoff last year. So we've had a playoff in 5 of the last 7 years. The only 2 we didn't were Brooks in 2021 and Ricky in 2019. And Brooks obviously had that insane eagle chip on 17 that was absolutely electric. So
yeah, and I think the only 2 years that we didn't have a playoff, I think it was decided by 1 stroke.
Ricky won by 2, but Brooks won by 1. Yeah.
Okay, Ricky won by 2. Yeah, so maybe I'm incorrect on that.
Well, yeah, but it's probably because he beat Brendan Graves, so it's not really that memorable. So, but here we are. We're back. Waste Management, Phoenix Open. Have had some success here. Let's get into it, Matt. We're at TPC Scottsdale. I think it's one of the better TPC courses. I think it really kind of has its tough places. I mean, there's places where you really don't want to be. Mostly, you do not want to end up in the desert, which goes without saying. And then there's some water holes. And at the end of the day, Sunday has created tons of drama. We have a great field, so I'm excited for it. What do you got on TPC Scottsdale?
Yeah, we par 71, 7,261 yards. The greens are Bermuda, Overseed, Poa Trivials. previous winners kind of touched on it. Scotty Scheffler last year, minus 16 in 2021 and minus 19. 2020 Webb, minus 17. Ricky, 2019, minus 17. So the winners kind of tend to fall in between that, minus 16 to minus 19 range. I would expect that to be the case this week as well. As far as the course, it's kind of weird. So with the greens, bad putters can putt well here.
Right.
But
it's not the putting doesn't matter.
No, because the people who have had success, and that was just what I was going to get into, have putted well. So last year, Scheffler, when he finished second in the field in putting, the year that Brooks won in 2021, 11 of the top 12 in the field gained strokes putting. The year that Webb won, the top 3 were all in the top 12 of putting. And the year that Ricky won, he led the field in putting. So people who play well here typically putt well here, but we've seen bad putters putt well here. So it's kind of a little bit of a weird situation to be in on how to gauge that this week. Because it's not like you want to completely ignore putting, but sometimes the putting numbers don't directly reflect how they're going to perform this week. On top of that, ball striking this week is going to be huge. So the driving distance here is longer than tour average. There is a little bit of a I guess because of the elevation and kind of the air pressure, whatever here, ball tends to travel a little bit further than normal. So you're going to see that driving distance go up. The driving accuracy is slightly below tour average, but the green regulation is higher than tour average. So the rough isn't going to kill you here, but like you mentioned, there is some spots you don't want to miss. I mean, there's some holes where if you miss wide of that rough, you can end up kind of behind trees or boulders, kind of in that sand area that make it really tough to get out of. Sometimes you have to take drops. It can be a real mess. So you don't want to miss too much, but you can get away with missing the fairway if you're in the rough. The course itself is a really cool course. It's challenging. I mean, there's only 3 par 5s. All 3 are reachable. But the 15th hole is the toughest one. There's water surrounding the green, and that hole actually plays pretty tough. I mean, if you remember, we see a lot of water balls on that hole, and we've seen some on Sunday take guys out of it. The year that Brooks won, there was actually a point in that back 9 where it looked like James Hahn was like in a pretty good spot. And I'm like, no way. And he put one in the water on 15 and kind of just took himself out of it. So that can happen if you get too aggressive on that hole. In particular, over the weekend, you kind of have to be smart on how you play that. And then the 17th hole is maybe the best hole in golf. It's a drivable par 4. You got water there to the left. Ton of risk reward there. I think the year that Ricky won, it was Grace put one in the water there and kind of solidified that for Fowler. But yeah, I mean, that's a really cool hole that, like you talked about, Brooks chipped in for Eagle when he won on there. You tend to see a lot of fires there. So this week, things that I'm focusing on, I mean, I'm looking at kind of ball striking numbers, a lot of approach. I think opportunities gain is going to be a big one. You're going to want to take advantage of the 3 par 5s and the drivable par 4 17th in particular. You're going to want to really score well on those holes if you want to win. And then putting, it's kind of tough to gauge. I'm not going to overly look into putting this week just because we have seen guys spike that aren't typically good putters. So I'm focusing primarily on just that approach, ball striking numbers, and then kind of the opportunity or birdie better gain, however you want to look at that, and guys who can kind of take advantage of those birdie holes. Did you have anything else in mind that you're looking at? Or
yeah, I mean, I like that. I mean, from a spin zone narrative, I think this is a tough event to play if you're not used to this type of environment. I think some guys get up for this type of event. I mean, it's a raucous crowd. It's attendance is through the roof. You don't see this type of energy at a lot of golf tournaments, even major type tournaments. Like, this is like a very different type of event. And we've seen certain players be able to handle it and certain players not be able to handle it. And I think that obviously favors the bigger names. I think they're more used to that type of following. They're used to that type of just intensity. And I don't know, it kind of gives like, Ryder Cup, President Cup type vibes where it's just like the crowds are insane. Like, there's going to be a lot of cheering. It's going to be like, you need to be in the zone. And it doesn't necessarily mean like personality wise. And we saw Cantlay play well here last year. And, he doesn't strike me as a guy that like is like, riling up the crowd, obviously, but he's able to play in this type of event. But yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. I think if you look at past winners here, they've played really well off the tee. Their driver's been consistent. You don't have to be overly long. We've seen different types of players play well here. And like you said, the elevation means shorter hitters are going to hit the ball a little bit farther. I think it's really going to be those mid irons into these greens, big greens. The guys that are sticking it close are giving themselves the best chance. And then the putting is interesting. I mean, you don't necessarily have to be a good putter, but we've seen spikes, and not even spikes. I mean, Brooks Koepka, pretty consistent, pretty good putter. Ricky Fowler, when he won, was kind of in the peak of his heyday, and he had always been noted as a good putter. But then we've seen other guys who, Hideki, not noted as a good putter, but then we've seen Webb Simpson, good putter. Scotty Scheffler, good putter. And obviously the Webb thing goes back and forth. But 2020, at that point, he had kind of put himself into that range of being an above-average putter. So it's an awesome week. That's really what it's about. I think, obviously, in terms of the odds list, like I'm looking towards the top of the board. I think this is one of those weeks where it's very similar to a major type field, and we'll see how these elevated events go. I think the $20 million purse, $3.6 million to the winner, I think that increases motivation for sure, and I think that's why all the big names are here. They only have a few skips to get through anyway, but also Will Zalatoris not being here is interesting. I noted that at the beginning. Feels like this is a course that he could play well at. I mean, we've said just about the putters. You can catch a hot putter here, and the greens are not easy to read, but you don't have to be one of the most elite putters to play well here. And ball striking and off the tee game is going to be huge. So I would think if he was feeling 100%, he'd be here. So maybe he's just trying to get a little bit more rest before the big part of the season comes. He wants to be rested for the players and the Masters, but interesting not seeing him here. Probably doesn't affect the odds list much. I mean, and that's what I will say about the odds list. We're about to get into it. Rory and Rahm being peak Rory and Rahm for the most part right now is just amazing. Besides the fact that I'm seriously concerned that one of them could win, I mean, the fact that we're getting top 10 players at 20-1 and above is awesome. So everyone who bets golf should be thanking Rory and Rahm for being as good as they are, because they're opening up the books to offering some great lines on other players, and we'll see. Rahm feels like he's due to win this event, and I'm sure Rory would love to win it too, but Rahm, Arizona State guy, TPC Scottsdale, he's had great history here. Scary. So,
and the way he's playing this year is terrifying. I mean,
right.
It was,
and this is ball striker's paradise.
Yeah, he really is just one bad round at the Farmers that Sunday away from being like pretty much unstoppable this season.
Yeah, he's pretty close to being undefeated this year, which is not good. So, but good, because we're getting great odds. So we'll take it. We'll take on the Rahm heat. He's scary. This is a perfect course for him. Like I said, ball striker's paradise. Off the tee, 150 to 200 proximity range. Mid irons. Guys that can make birdies. And trying to stay out of trouble. So that's why I think the driver is going to be important this week. Not necessarily by being super long, but just being consistent with it, not putting yourself in trouble. So let's get to the odds list. FanDuel has Rory and Rahm plus 700, plus 800. Rahm is the favorite at plus 700. And we got Scheffler, Xander at 13 and 14. And then Colin Morikawa, Tony Finau at 16 and 18. Those are the top 6 on the board. And I'll just read off a few other guys here. Cantlay, JT, and Homa all at 21 on FanDuel. And then Sungjae, Tom Kim, Cam Young, and Hideki all at between 25 and 29. So that's your top 15, roughly. We'll get into the 30s after this, but top of the board seems essential this week. It's got a major type feel. Like I said, I think the people know we're clearly not going to bet Rory or Rahm. We're thankful that they're here. Those odds are pretty short, tough to really back them unless you just want to absolutely put all of your outright money on one of them. It doesn't feel worth it. So getting past them and all the fears that we have with them, where are you looking?
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you. It's no fun to put your eggs in one basket up there. So I am going to start with Justin Thomas, 21-1.
Let's go. JT
JT,
week.
yeah, yeah. And the last time the boys were on JT together, he did win the PGA Championship. I don't know if we've both taken them together since then, but I'm going to pretend we haven't. So JT week.
I don't think we have.
Anytime you get
Together,
it,
at least. Yeah.
yeah, I don't think so either. So I mean,
We've also
anytime you
been
get
on these
JT,
last 2 wins. I'm talking about the players as well. So in 2021.
yeah, well, so anytime you get him, I mean, I think 20-1 or higher, it's pretty much an auto bet, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense like this week. I mean, I get that Rory and Rahm are here, but it's usually when we get him at that number, like he's kind of playing like shit going into it. And it's not really the case here. I mean, he was 25th last time we saw him with the Farmers. He gained over 3 strokes, 5.3 tee to green, and he was good around the green. And then you look at his course history here. I mean, his last 5, he was 8th, 3rd, and 17th. Like he's good at the course. He's playing fine. I mean, he's a type of guy that has, a ton of, birdies are better, opportunities gained, everything you're looking for this week. If he just kind of keeps his driver in check in terms of accuracy, there's no reason why he can't win this event. And this is a perfect type of atmosphere for him, like getting fired up with the crowd. And he kind of loves that type of stuff at Ryder Cup and President Cup type, atmospheres. So I love everything about him this week.
Yeah, love it. Absolutely love it. Because you look at him and you say, well, he hasn't played great. Like he hasn't played up to JT standard per se. But like you mentioned, not horrible. And he's only played 3 times since October. And we played the CJ Cup, Tournament of Champions, and then Farmers. But in between that, as you well know, because you hit on Spieth most points at the President's Cup, he played well that week. Him and Spieth played well that week. I mean, and that's an environment JT gets up for. This is going to be a place he's going to get up for. I think he's sniffed winning here enough times where I think he's highly motivated to do so this week. And we talked about putting, being, relatively inconsistent with maybe putters who don't typically putt well all the time, having the opportunity to putt well here. He's putted well here. I mean, he likes these greens. Gained over 4 strokes in 2021, 4 strokes in 2020, 2.5 in 19, over 3 in 2018. And it just feels like he's due for a win. And like you mentioned, Justin Thomas gets in the 20s. It does feel like an auto bet. There's really nothing more to say other than that. And I mentioned his putter. He didn't putt well last year and still finished inside the top 10. So I think he loves this place and he loves the atmosphere. He's due for a win. If there's any guy that's kind of inside the top 10 in the world, like not necessarily something to prove this week, but he has not won as much as he was used to winning earlier in his career. And I think this is a place where he would love to kind of jumpstart his season with a win here. So I love it. As soon as those odds came out, I thought it was great.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't know what we were going to get out of him this week, and I saw the 20, and it was automatic for me. One thing I don't get, I mean, we kind of briefly texted about this, but do you understand why he's 21-1 and Xander Schauffele is 14-1?
I mean, technically, Xander's just been more consistent, I guess last 12 months, but not really. No. I mean, I'll never really understand it because JT just wins more, but.
Yeah, he has more win equity. I mean, I don't know. I don't get it. I couldn't imagine, like, Xander's the 4th guy in this field, and it doesn't make sense to me why that's the case.
Yeah. It's funny, you didn't have this energy for the longest time earlier in our podcast days, but at the same time, he wasn't at 13-1. He was in the 20s. So.
No, and well, that's the thing. I was a Xander guy for the longest time, and then I realized, like, what am I doing? This guy doesn't win. And it's crazy because since I've got off him 2 years ago, I haven't really got burned much by him. I mean, he's had 2 wins, I think. One of them was at the Olympics.
Yeah.
It's not like he's turned into this winner all the time. I don't know. I don't understand it. It seems like this year we're going to be, getting him at low numbers a lot. So I'm not going to be jumping back on that Xander train. I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same. I mean, to a lesser degree, Finau. I mean, Finau's won 3 times, 3 or 4 times over his last 12 months. But like at the same time, you know, he got hot. I don't necessarily think he's now just a better golfer than Justin Thomas. I don't think he has a better chance to win at these events than Justin Thomas. They both have good course history. Yeah, I mean, JT at 20, I don't know what the books are really thinking there, to be honest, but we'll take it. So I am also going to jump back into Foxhole with Colin Morikawa, begrudgingly to a degree, obviously after the heartbreak at the Tournament of Champions, but there's just there's enough there where I've kind of always been a Morikawa guy. I just feel like when his irons are hot, he's just going to be in the mix, and that's what he does. I mean, he backed up that catastrophe at the Tournament of Champions with being in contention at the Farmers. You know, gained over 6.5 strokes on approach, gained 3.5 strokes off the tee, 10 strokes tee to green, putted well. So it's 2 weeks in a row he's putted well. He's only played here once, I believe, and finished 25th. But yeah, I mean, if an event is going to be heavy on ball striking and putting isn't going to be a huge factor, I'm going to like Morikawa. I mean, I got him at 18. I'll take it. I mean, there's a little bit of scar tissue with him, but at the same time, I just feel like he's going to be in the mix. Have a hard time believing he's not going to play well this week after what we've seen. There were some inconsistencies last year, and it seems like he's kind of rounded into form. I'm sure he hates himself for that collapse of the Tournament of Champions, but the fact that he came out at the Farmers and played well again, pretty confident that he's going to continue to play well this year. So I had to do it.
Yeah, I think you make a lot of fair points. I mean, you're a braver man than me after what went down at the Tournament of Champions, that you can hop right back on board. But he makes a lot of sense at this course. Do you have any kind of, like, if he's up by 2, say, going into Sunday, are you kind of worried about it? I mean, I know he's a 2-time major champion, so I'm not trying to say he can't close, but the last 2 times he has had a lead going into Sunday. I mean, it was obviously the Tournament of Champions, he 6, I think, and then the Hero World Challenge.
To answer your question,
4, 5. It's been 2.
Yeah, well, to answer your question, I mean, I would feel pretty similar to him being like down 1 if he was up 2. Like, got a good chance to win. But to be honest, I'd probably rather him be up 2 than up 6 after what we just saw. So. Yeah. So, and honestly, I mean, we've seen this plenty of times. Like, I don't hate being like down 1 or down 2 going into a Sunday. Like, I just think he's going to be in the mix come Sunday, and that's all you can really ask for when you're betting outright. So if he's up 6 again, I'm going to be feeling pretty weird. I'm going to be feeling like there's no way he could possibly blow this twice. But I'm going back to him. I feel like it's a fair number. And I'll take my chances with Colin. So, yeah, that's all I can say.
Yeah, that's fair. I am going one more guy toward the top of the board here. Not one of my typical guys, but I'm taking Patrick Cantlay, 21-1. I have a good feeling about Cantlay this week. He was second here last year in his debut. We haven't really seen a ton of him to start the year. He was 26th at the Amex. He usually plays Pebble Beach, didn't play this year. He was 26th at the Amex. He lost 3 strokes putting, gained 4.1 tee to green, but he's typically a good ball striker. I like a lot of what he could do this week. I mean, he's a pretty complete all-around player. We kind of talk about it a lot. He's pretty similar to Xander. In my opinion, he's got bigger wins than Xander. He hasn't really broke through it like majors yet, but he's picked up a few FedEx Cup playoff wins. He's won the BMW now 2 years in a row. Those are obviously good fields. He started to play better at the majors last year. He was 8th at the Open Championship, 14th at the U.S. Open. So he is starting to trend in the positive direction in these bigger events. This kind of feels like one that he can win, that he could steal. He had a real chance last year. I don't know. I have a good feeling about Cantlay this week. I mean, I think he makes a lot of sense there. And once again, he kind of caught my eye because he got over that 20-1 mark. I think it doesn't seem like that big of a difference, but it is. Like whether you have a 1 in front of your name or a 2, it kind of makes a big difference in your mind mentally.
Yeah, that's
so
fair.
I saw the 2
Also,
in front of his name, and I was like, I'm going to do it.
The transition from you becoming a Cantlay guy over Xander guy has been phenomenal.
Yeah.
You've also, because I don't have the stats in front of me, but I know for a fact you've bet Cantlay at least once over the past 3 months. I'm not sure when, but it happens. He didn't win.
Know. I don't remember betting him since I think I bet him at the Open Championship in July.
All right, I don't know. That, but I'm pretty sure you bet him again after that. So
it's possible. I'm not saying you're wrong. I just don't remember when I did it, but it's possible. Yeah, well, you know what? Cantlay, I'll be honest. I really didn't like Cantlay for the longest time. And he sort of won me over when he went on that like crazy playoff run. And like, especially when he beat Bryson in that insane playoff when like Bryson should have won like 6 times. I was like, holy shit, man, Cantlay is nails. I didn't think he had it in him to do that. He gained a lot of my respect there.
All right, that's fair. Because I'm not saying I've been a negative Cantlay. We've been a negative Cantlay podcast. We probably started out as that, and we've had to pivot because
he's kind of like, he's kind of like a weird personality, though. I mean, it's not like he's like bland. A really cool guy. Yeah, he's pretty boring. I'm not going to deny that. Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, we touched on Xander briefly. Scotty, obviously the reigning champion. I think he's a pretty fair number, 13-1. Haven't seen a ton of him. He's played pretty well. I mean, I don't see, 13 is a tough number. I don't think he's going to win back-to-back. That was really kind of the end of there. And then I think Finau at 18, anything under 20 with Finau, I don't love. Course does set up well for him. I just think he's due for some sort of regression this year. I don't think he's going to win 3 times again. So not taking Finau. We did talk offline that you were considering Max Homa, so I feel like you should touch on that. He's now up with the big dogs. He's at 21-1 alongside JT and Cantlay. So,
yeah, here's the thing, like with Homa. So I don't know if I want to take 3 guys to 21-1. I'm in a little bit of a tough situation. What I'm going to do at the middle of my card here, and if I want to start the middle at the top with Homa, but I feel like it's a little bit weird. Like this is higher than we normally see Max Homa on an odds list, but at the same time, I feel like everyone's completely overlooking Max Homa in an event that, like, I get he just won, but like if he finished second at the Farmers, like I feel like a ton of people would be taking him. And it's kind of weird. I mean, this is an event that sets up perfectly for him. He's a Scottsdale guy. He has proven time and time again over the past, 2 years that he's a winner now. I mean, when we talked about it, when he's in contention, he tends to close it out. I think it's the stat was like, and if I messed it up, my bad, but it's pretty close. Him, Rory, Rahm, and Cantlay, I think, are the only guys who have won, 4 or 5 times over the last, 2 years. It's kind of insane. Like, he's up there with the big dogs. So I guess he is deserving of being this spot in the odds list. I mean, he's won some big events like the Farmers and Riviera and Quail Hollow. They're not at this full stack field major level. I guess Riviera to a degree is a pretty good field, but this would be probably the biggest win of his career. But it's always tough to win back to back, but it does feel like he's just completely being dismissed. And I don't think that should be the case.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if he's being dismissed. I just feel like if you said, if he had come in second, I think he's at 35 and not 21. So then I think people would bet him at 35. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I don't know for sure, but I think his odds would be better.
Yeah, I haven't seen anyone take him.
I have a hard time believing that a lot of players are capable of winning back-to-back starts just because it's really hard to be that good for 8 rounds in a row. But, we've seen players do it. It's just really difficult to do, especially in a field like this where there are a ton of guys who have a ton of success at this course in particular. So when I saw him at 21, it kind of, I probably wasn't going to bet him either way, even if he was at 35. But I get your point. I mean, he's deserved of being up here now, especially after his win at the Farmers. I just think you have to have some pretty strong conviction that he's going to play really well again to bet him at 21 when he's kind of in the midst of this hot streak, and you probably going to get him at better numbers after he kind of goes back to maybe not typical Max Homa, but if he finishes, T25 this week, the next time there's an elevated event, he'll probably be in the 30s. So,
yeah, maybe. Yeah. And I don't know what I'm going to do with him yet because I have really not a lot of conviction in the middle of the board, and we're going to get to that in a second. But yeah, it's tough to kind of figure out where to fall in this range. Do you want to get
Fair enough.
into? Yeah, you want to get into the next section?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned Sung Jae and Tom Kim, or did I? Yeah, I did, and Cam Young. So we'll just list them in the next section because we kind of rambled on here. So Sung Jae, Tom Kim, Cam Young, Hideki, Hovland, all between 25 and 30. And then Fitzpatrick, Spieth, Burns, Thigala, all between 37 and 45 on FanDuel Sportsbook. And then we're in the mid 50s and above with Hatton, Lowry, Fowler, Montgomery, Bradley, Day, Noren, and Mitchell. And then everything else is 70 or above on FanDuel. So Tom Kim and Sung Jae, I feel like are getting a decent amount of love this week. I don't hate it. I don't love it. Not going to bet either of them. I'm looking more into Cam Young, Hideki spot where I'm a little bit torn on where to go there. Obviously, Hideki's won here twice. Last time we saw him, played pretty well. We talked offline about this, but he did putt extremely well at the Farmers, so that might be a little bit of an outlier. But, you know, he's number one in strokes gained total at TPC Scottsdale in this field over the last 36 rounds. He's been a sensational tee to green, ball striking, approach, pretty much everything you could ask for. Been really good around the green, and he hasn't even putted particularly well and has still been that good. So Hideki and then Cam Young, I mean, I still feel like the dude is due for a win, and maybe it's going to come in an event like this. So I'm torn on where to go with that because I do think it'll be tough for Hideki to win his third here, but I also think it'll be tough for Cam to win his first here. That's where I'm at in this range. Talk to me about what you're thinking while I try to chop that up in my head.
I will say, not to sway you one way or the other, but it's weird because I did just finish saying how like Cam Young, when he was down the stretch last week, couldn't make a 5-footer, and he's really costing himself with the putter. But I just had a flashback. I remember we had the same conversation last year about Scotty Scheffler had never won and how it's going to be tough to get your first win at this type of atmosphere. And like, sure enough, he did it. So, to say the same thing about Cam Young this year at probably a similar number that Scheffler was at last year, like maybe we're just not giving him enough credit. The guy was right in the mix in 2 of the majors last year. I mean, he played really well at the Memorial. I kind of like him better on like more of courses that you're avoiding bogeys rather than like trying to make birdies, but he can make a lot of birdies too. It just seems like he's really stepped up at kind of those majors where it's tougher to go low, but he's got birdies in him.
The Open Championship ended up being kind of a birdie fest, and he was right there.
Yeah, maybe we're just not giving Cam Young the credit he deserves. I mean, I sat here last year and I tried to say, like, I'm not going to take Scheffler because he hasn't won yet. This is a tough event to get his first win, and he shoved it down my throat. He went on to win this, then the Arnold Palmer, then the Masters, and I was like completely wrong. So maybe it is Cam Young's time,
Yeah, maybe. I mean, he's got 7 top threes, including last week's performance at the Saudi event since February of last year. So, I mean, the dude has been sniffing a win for a year now, and this does feel like a course that's going to be up his alley. I mean, he's phenomenal off the tee. Obviously, he's super long, but, he's gained off the tee and as far back as you can go. So he played poorly at the Players last year. His approach game can be really good. He played here last year and was, I guess, mediocre. He finished 26th, lost 2 strokes on approach, putted well, was good off the tee. So I think if he's good off the tee again, I mean, I think his approach game is something that I wouldn't expect him to do poorly again, especially now that he's got a feel for the course. I think I'm leaning Cam Young over Hideki this week.
So there's 2 things that I'm curious where you're at on, because there is this like kind of weird aspect that he is coming from like the Middle East to play here. Does that have any kind of impact on your mindset, on his readiness? I mean, I don't think it's the end of the world. They're flying pretty good. It's not like he's flying home on Frontier, But
yeah, he's flying home on Spirit in the last row. No, yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I mean, we've talked about this before. There's some aspect to that I would be kind of worried about, but at the same time, you know, I mean, yeah, it's weird because actually a lot of players didn't play at AT&T last week. Like I would say I almost would rather have them played at Saudi than in AT&T with that whole disjointed finish. They finish on Monday, completely throws their routine off. You know, they're traveling later on Monday, but really a lot of these guys kind of rested up before this event. So I don't hate that he played last week. He played well, putted poorly on Sunday, didn't give himself a chance. So I don't hate it. It doesn't really affect me either way. So,
and I do think there's also a little bit of a motivating factor for him. So we kind of touched on this too. The PGA decided to kind of slap him in the face, or I guess the wrist, for going to play in Saudi, and they paired him with Richie Werenski and Laird week.
Yeah.
So I think Cam Young might come out a little bit motivated.
Yeah, well, and also, I mean, we talked about the atmosphere. Like, that's not necessarily a bad spot, in particular, to fly under the radar on Thursday and Friday. Like, no one's gonna be following fucking Martin Laird and Richie Werenski's group. Obviously, Cam Young will have his fans out there, but he's not the biggest name on tour, so I don't think it's a horrible spot for him to be in. Doesn't have to have a ton of attention and can kind of fly under the radar Thursday, Friday. And I think I probably just convinced myself to take maybe a Cam Young first round leader bet as well. Yeah, I actually don't hate that at all. So
I think that I'm gonna hop on Cam Young with you because
let's go. I wasn't expecting it at all.
We had a similar conversation. Yeah. Well, I wasn't either, but I didn't know what to do with the middle of the card, and I just am now I'm just getting like a complete deja vu from last year when we were discussing Scotty Scheffler and how he had never won and like can he break through here, and I just don't want to miss out on it again.
All right, let's do it. Fuck yeah. All right, beautiful. All right, that was unexpected. So this is the middle of the board, and now we're on Cam Young together. Beautiful.
Yeah.
I mentioned I considered Hideki. Matt Fitzpatrick apparently did with the back issue. That was weird last week. He played well here last year. He's at 37. I think that's an interesting number for him. Spieth played poorly last week at a course that he loves, so he's trending kind of in the opposite direction. He's at 40. I think that's a pretty big number for his that he's played well at.
You know that he opened up in the 20s.
Yeah. But you know what? This is like kind of not really a Spieth. It's not really a Spieth type course, anyway. In theory,
yeah. He actually the year that Brooks won, I think he was in the mix.
Yeah, he's played Sunday. Well here,
and I think I think he hit if I recall, I think he hit a tee shot into the water on the back nine on Sunday. He hit one left off the tee, and I think took himself out of it. But he was in the mix for a little bit there. That was back like when he was like real bad and he got himself in the mix a few years.
2021
tournaments in a row. Yeah. But but he's got
3 top 10s here since 2015.
I hit on him at the President's Cup for most points, but he's kind of looked pretty bad to start this year. I mean, his irons haven't been great. He looked like shit at Pebble Beach, which is like his course. There's not a lot trending in the right direction for him right now.
Yeah. So I have a couple of friends and family bets coming up. And then my card's pretty much wrapped up. I'm not going to really take any super long shots. I have a couple of top 20, top 40 plays I kind of like further down the board. But, I mean, this opened up and Sam Burns, 42 on FanDuel, 55 on DraftKings. You can get a 55 on Sam Burns. I'm going to take it. It's just I have to. I've been on the guy's bandwagon forever. He modeled out really poorly. He has not played well, not been the peak Sam Burns that we saw in the middle of last year in the summer. Kind of started at the Valspar. Really, it was all last season. I mean, won to Sanderson, won Valspar, won Charles Schwab. Played decently in the end of the 2022 season, and then in the fall swing finished 7th in the CJ Cup. And then I will say, I mean, he finished 11th at the American Express, where he gained in all four major categories, which I don't hate. So yeah, I'm going to take Sam Burns. I think there's less to be upset about than people think. I mean, he missed a cut last year. He's missed 3 out of his 4 cuts here. I think the President's Cup experience for him will definitely help him be prepared for this kind of atmosphere. And I think as well-rounded of his game as it gets. He's going to be strong off the tee. He can be good on approach. And we know he can get hot with the putter as well. So I'm on Sam Burns. I thought it was a pretty nice number. So that was an easy bet for me. So I had to get that.
Yeah, I agree. I considered him. You're more of a Burns guy. You've hit on him a lot. I couldn't really get there just because of the course history, but definitely a fair number, and I definitely think he can play well here. And then you have,
judging by your comments, it doesn't seem like you have anyone else in this range.
No, I have two guys that are 75 and above, and then that's the end of my call.
All right, so let me get to my other friends and family play.
Yeah.
I think if you've listened to this podcast since the beginning, you would know that I'm a big Ricky Fowler guy. The dude's back. He's back. Second at the Zozo in October, 6th in the Fortinet in September, and then 11th last time we saw him at the Farmers, where he looked really good. I mean, if he didn't really shit the bed on that one par 5 on Sunday, like he had a chance to be in the mix. And that, I mean, he ended up losing 2.5 strokes around the green, which I think was probably a lot to do with that hole where he duffed a chip and then duffed a chip again. Putted well, was really good on approach. Looks like his driver is looking good. And the guy likes his course. I mean, he missed a cut last year, but he's got 4 top 11s with a win and a runner-up. And we haven't seen Ricky looking this good in a long time. So I'm going to take him at 60-1 at a course that he loves. This is a place where it seems like some guys are ready for it and some guys aren't. Ricky's one of the guys that loves this place, so I'm all about it. Also, definitely was one of my favorite Super Bowl years, the year that he won back in 2019. So I wonder what it was so good. I forget even what the game was. What was it? And it was a horrible Super Bowl.
Yeah,
it was the Patriots beating the Rams 13-3. So.
Oh yeah, that was a horrible. Well, yeah, that was a horrible Super Bowl. Not a lot happened in that game.
No. So, so you had to be happy. You already had Ricky Fowler. My day couldn't be ruined. So
yeah.
A lot of props that didn't win that day. That's for sure.
Yeah,
because I wasn't taking unders.
Yeah. Yeah, that was.
All right, so let's get to the rest of the board here. I'll say there are some interesting numbers that we kind of glossed over. Thigala played really well last year. I think his number is a little inflated at 45. Lowry and Hatton, I think, are pretty fair numbers, pretty enticing. I think if you're a fan of either of those guys, I do like betting Hatton. Not going to get there. And then Montgomery, Keegan, Jason Day. I mean, Montgomery, the up-and-comers, played well. This doesn't strike me as a place that's going to be great for him necessarily as a rookie, but and then Keegan and Jay Day both have looked pretty well over the last month. But we're 70 and above. So floor is yours. Starts with Tommy Fleetwood, ends at Chris Kirk on FanDuel at least from 70 to 100. Connors, Siwoo Kim, Russell Henley, Aaron Wise, JT Poston, Horschel, Seamus Power, Tom Hoagie, Lucas Herbert. That's kind of the mix of the guys we're working with. What do you got? And then I'll hit you with a couple of top 20, top 40 plays I'm looking at further down the board.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy real quick that Fleetwood is now at 70-1, at least on FanDuel. He started week at the same number as Hatton at 50-1. I guess
he's 80 on DraftKings too.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. I mean, I considered Roden for a while. I do like Hatton too. I think we're getting close to Hatton territory. He typically plays well in Florida, so give it 2 more weeks, we'll be able to take Terrell Hatton.
Yes.
In this period, in this group here, this section, I'm going to take Corey Connors, 75-1. I don't take Corey Connors a lot. He's not really like a bona fide winner per se, but 75 feels like a pretty fair number in like kind of a ball striker's course. He's played here 3 times, 3 made cuts, nothing fantastic, 38th, 17th, and 45th. But when you talk about off the tee and approach game, I mean, the last time he lost strokes off the tee, this is crazy, it's February of 2021, and he hasn't lost strokes on approach since May of last year. So we know obviously he's a horrible putter and that could hold him back, but we did talk about in the opening that this is sort of a course where horrible putters can kind of putt well here. If he has a week where he's, putting average or maybe even, slightly above, he could very much be in the mix just with how well he strikes the ball. So for me, 75-1 feels pretty fair. I mean, I could see himself at least getting himself in the mix over the weekend and having a shot, which is all you could really ask for on a long shot. So
yeah, well, it's funny too because we mentioned like not even like he could have like an above average putting week. Like he could just putt well here randomly. Like we've seen the leaderboards where a lot of guys do putt well, but it doesn't mean that they're good putters. Like they could just putt well this week at this course. So it's possible. I do think it's a good setup for Corey Connors. My only thing is I don't know if I could see him being in contention and then shitting it down his leg on 17 potentially. I hope that doesn't come to fruition for you, but that's all I'm going to say. That would be what my worry.
I mean, I'm not super confident.
That's what your worry would be with anyone really down here for the most part. So, like I said,
if I'm the one, I mean, here's the thing. When you're taking a long shot, it's like if they have a chance, then that's all you could ask for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. If any of these guys are within 2 on Sunday, you're fucking happy. So, anyone else you got before I get into my long shot?
And then one, I'm taking. I'm going to take JT Poston. So he's got 85.
Give us some spins going on taking JT Poston this week. JT Poston winning the elevated event, the first elevated event. 3.6 mil. JT
Poston's coming. Poston's coming. I got him at 100-1 when it opened up. He's fallen down to 85. I guess I'm not the only one putting some action on JT Poston. Seems to be some money coming in on the Postman. They think he's going to deliver on Super Bowl Sunday. He's got some pretty decent course history here: 23rd, 11th, 37th, and 26th. He's coming in playing well. I mean, he was 6th last time we saw him at the MX, 21st at the Sony, 21st to Saturday Tournament of Champions. Not great, but he has played 3 times, back-to-back good finishes. He's gained strokes on approach last 4 starts. This is a guy that we know he can get red hot putting. Not that guys who don't particularly always putt well can have success this week, so you don't need to be a great putter. But we have seen guys win because they were like number 1 in the field in putting. Poston's a guy who can really heat up with putter. He's hitting his irons really well, so that's usually the part of his game that holds him back. He's an accurate hitter off the tee. He's not the longest guy, but he tends to find fairways. So those irons stay the way they're staying, and he gets hot with the putter. I mean, we've seen him spike in some rounds. I think JT Poston is a little bit better than the odds are giving him credit for. He hasn't really won huge events, but I think the Postman's going to get himself in the mix this weekend.
Yeah, you got me kind of like just enticed now on taking a little bit of a long shot here. And since we've gotten to 40 or above, it's kind of been
I'm selling you on Poston.
No, you haven't sold me a Poston. I'm just thinking now anything's possible if you're betting JT Poston. So I'm thinking I'm already definitely going to take Russell Henley first round leader, but I'm kind of convincing myself that maybe it's possible he wins this week. I mean, this is an event that really should shape up well for him. I mean, he's not like notoriously a guy who gains a ton of strokes off the tee, but if you look at his last 36 rounds in terms of good drives gained, he's top 5, top 13 in strokes gained on approach. We know he can putt well. We know that he's got the ability to be one of the best ball strikers out here in terms of accuracy with his irons. So I don't hate Henley at this course. He hasn't been overly impressive by any means. I think he's got 15th in 2019, 16th in 2017. He's played here consistently since 2013, which I do like. Finished 33rd here last year, and it was a very weird year for him. He gained over 5 strokes around the green, but didn't play well on approach. So I'm going to take Russell Henley first round leader, and don't count me out for taking him on my outright card as well. I've now just kind of gotten the taste for getting a little long shot action. So that's where I'm at there.
Well, I'm glad I gave you.
Yeah,
glad I gave you the taste for the long shot.
Yeah, you gave me the itch, got the juices flowing. Now let's talk about anything over 100-1 guys you're interested in having a piece of. I have a couple that I'm looking at. I'll just get one of them right off the bat. Brendan Steele. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I know they kind of changed the course a bit 2014, but he's played here every year since 2011. He has 4 top 10s, the 3rd place finish as well, and then 2 additional top 20s and a 30th in 2021. Missed a cut here last year, and I don't know. We've seen him be pretty consistent to start the year. He's 18th to CJ Cup, 48th Sony Open, 32nd American Express, 20th at the Farmers. He's putted like shit his last 3 events, but I'm not really looking at him for his putter. He's been good off the tee. He's been really good on approach. I feel like a top 20, top 40 bet on Brendan Steele is something that I'm going to be looking at depending on the value there. That's my first thought on guys above 100.
Yeah, I'm not gonna get there on Steele. I had him at the Farmers.
You're a Brendan Steele guy every now and again. No, come on.
Yeah, I had him at the Farmers. He actually did cash a top 20, but it was split, and it was actually like the most depressing top 20 ever because he was in second going into Saturday, and then just completely shit the bed to the point where like he almost didn't get the top 20, but he did split it, so I can't hate him too much.
Yeah,
I think that it's going to be a little bit tougher of a task this week at the elevated event, but yeah, I don't think it's a horrible play.
Yeah, well, you feel like that's a tough task.
The guy
tougher task coming up, but I'll let you go.
Well, a guy I'm considering here for top 20, Wyndham Clark. He's 130 to 1 on the odds list. I don't have the top 20 number in front of me, but he is a Scottsdale guy. He's playing better over the last, half a year or so. He had really only one way to go from where he was at before, but they kind of talked about it on the broadcast. I think they gave him maybe a little too much credit, saying that he was like due for a win and he start. I don't think that's necessarily the case, but he has been playing a little bit better. So I could see him, popping up possibly in a hometown and
well, he's top 20 plus 450, top 40 plus 130. Pretty good numbers.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Top 40 plus 130.
Yeah. Steele is minus 105, top 40, and plus 290, top 20. So I'll probably take him as a top 40. I have a juice. I like the juice though. I'm feeling good this week. I'll probably take the top 20 actually. So, although I don't know. I'm debating on that. So that's where I'm at there. All right. So Wyndham Clark, I agree. Could be a decent play there. Don't hate it. I'm trying to not shit talk any of your picks too much because of last week. So, feel free to shit talk this one though because eventually people.
I was gonna say, if you want to shit talk. I was gonna say, if you want to shit talk Wyndham Clark, go right ahead. It's not a pick I'm holding, dear to my heart.
Well, yeah. So this next one, I mean, I guess it's getting somewhat exhausting, but there's enough there. I just have to keep doing it. So Matthew Neesmith, he is plus 750 top 20. So very juicy. And if you want to be a little bit more realistic, he's plus 200 top 40. Yeah, I mean, last week was pretty unencouraging. I mean, I hate that tournament in general, but I will say that he at least made the cut because he had missed 3 straight cuts. So he made the cut. Was really bad on approach, which I mean should have been a course or courses that fit him a little bit better because there were smaller greens, etc. He did not hit the ball well on approach. That being said, finished 7th here in 2021 and missed a cut here last year. Only been here twice, got 1 top 10, and in theory, this is a Matthew Neesmith type of course where I feel like he's going to be value for a top 20, top 40 play. He's been pretty strong off the tee over the past year. He's turned into, unfortunately, a little bit either of a spike approach game player. Like he hasn't been super consistent, but gaining 5 strokes on approach is not out of his wheelhouse by any means. He's actually putted decently since October of last year. I just can't stop taking Matthew Neesmith bets. I have a fucking problem. So that's where I'm at. I hate it. He's 250 to 1, and I have to do it. I mean, plus 200 top 40 feels a little bit too good for a guy that I think sets up well for this course. And going back to early October, he had 3 straight top 10s with a runner-up. then played poorly at the beginning of this year. And then, I mean, I'm not going to look too much into last week, but he made the cut, finished 55th, and he's due for a top 40, so plus 200.
Hey, I mean, I don't mind a friends and family play. That's kind of your guy. I've said it before. I think you're the biggest and maybe only Matthew Neesmith fan out there. So
yeah,
well,
I don't know. People are, you know what? There were a bunch of people that took him last week, actually.
Yeah, there was.
Matthew Neesmith was getting tossed around last week. Yeah. Yeah. So, but I bet you a lot of people aren't taking him this week, and I am. So I'm back on it. You're frozen right now. Your face is frozen. Not sure if your audio is going to come back, if you're talking or not. So I'm going to continue on here. But this is an important part of the podcast because we're looking to get into Super Bowl prop bets. Matt's frozen. While he kind of works that out, I'm going to just recap my card very quickly here. I am rolling with Colin Morikawa, Justin Thomas up top. We convinced ourselves on Cam Young. I like that a lot. And then Sam Burns and Ricky Fowler to kind of round it out. And then first-round leader, I'm going to definitely be taking Russell Henley, also taking Cam Young. I'll probably throw in a couple of others as well. And then top 20, top 40 market, looking at Steele and Neesmith for sure, with probably a mix of Fowler and potentially a few others as we get into tomorrow. But that's where I'm at, Matt. Let's just recap your card real quick, and then I'll give my quick one and done thoughts, and we'll talk Super Bowl.
Yeah, I have JT, Patrick Cantlay, Cam Young, Corey Connors, and JT Poston outright. Top 20 play, I'm probably going to have some kind of combination of those guys. Maybe throwing a Wyndham Clark, top 40. Actually, another top 40 I'm considering kind of briefly is Sam Ryder. He played really well with the Farmers. Didn't get it done, but he's all the way down there at 210-1. He did have a hole-in-one here last year too, so maybe some positive vibes at the course and, just on performance coming in. So it might be an interesting play there for a little top 40 on Sam Ryder, playing well at the moment.
Okay, I like that. I'm also going to throw this out there. I haven't said his name in a while. Emiliano Grillo I have Emiliano Grillo vibes this week. I don't know what that means. Yeah, I don't know what that means. Probably going to take him for a top 40, maybe a first-round leader. Another, a guy that can absolutely spike on approach and has been pretty good off the tee. Has played here a bunch, been relatively inconsistent, but he's made the cut 5 out of his last 7 years. Hasn't cracked a top 20 yet, so probably a top 40 play. The odds are not terrific on that. Plus 145, though. I don't hate it. So we'll consider that. And then one and done. I'm between Morikawa and JT, my top 2 picks of the week. I'm not getting fancy anymore. The guys that I like, I'm going to play one and done. It's a big week. This is weird this year in terms of playing one and done because last year, obviously, there were none of these elevated events. I was having a relatively inconspicuous year, hit Cam Smith at the Players. This is as similar as it gets to that. The purse is over double what it was last year at this event, and that's what it's going to be like for all these elevated events. So you hit a one and done play this week. I mean, it's as big as any of the majors. So it's going to be interesting because there's 11 of them.
I don't even know the exact number, but
right, I might have just made that up. So
I probably should know that, but I don't.
It's been a long hour, so JT is where I'm leaning. Morikawa is also being heavily considered. So that's where we're at. Quickly, Super Bowl thoughts. Obviously, you're a big Eagles fan. Great year. Pretty interesting, kind of the similarities between the Chiefs and Eagles. A little bit of different paths to where they got to the first seed. Eagles kind of faded a little bit down the stretch. Hurts got hurt. They, didn't play great, but then have absolutely obliterated their opponents in the playoffs. Chiefs were pretty consistent all year, but the number 1 seed was certainly in question going down to the finish. And then they were in a dogfight with the Bengals coming into this game. Do you feel worried at all that the Eagles really haven't faced any adversity in a little bit of a long time, and now they're playing the Chiefs, who have Super Bowl pedigree? What's your thoughts there?
I'm not so much about not facing adversity. I mean, I think the Chiefs are obviously way tougher than any team we've played in quite some time, possibly all season. So there's definitely just nervousness in the caliber of team you're going up against. You got Mahomes, who's probably the best quarterback in the league. You know, they've won a Super Bowl before, so it's definitely going to be a tough task. I think the good thing is, in terms of like not going through dogfights in the playoffs, the Eagles are coming in pretty healthy. I mean, you see Mahomes kind of limping around in that AFC Championship game. He got hurt against the Jags. The Chiefs wide receiving core got a little banged up in those games. Travis Kelce had a back injury, was questionable for the AFC Championship. Like, the Eagles have been, knock on wood, pretty healthy team in the playoffs. I mean, Lane Johnson's playing through an injury, but he's good to go. I think that's the fact that they're not getting tested is at least a positive, where they're not having guys, you know, injured and really, you know, putting themselves in too much danger going into this game. So that's a positive in my mind.
All right, that's fair. Yeah. Devil's advocate. I mean, I don't think Hurts has been playing 100% necessarily. They haven't really needed him to be 100% realistically. I think it's interesting. He hasn't really been, I guess, as good as he was at the beginning of the season with, you know, kind of his deep balls and things like that. I think it gets harder to throw a deep ball the further you get in the season. Defense get a little bit tighter. But I think they're going to need to make some big plays to win this game for sure. Do you think they can kind of just rely on the running game? Like, I mean, they've had such a good year. A.J. Brown, Devonta have been great receivers. Goddard is solid. Like, they have all the aspects that they need on offense, and then their defense has been great too. So I'm kind of torn on where to go with this game. Obviously, you're an Eagles fan. I think the Chiefs are probably not as good on paper as the Eagles in terms of roster, but I think that's a little bit overstated. And I think the Chiefs probably have three of the potential best players in the game with Mahomes, Kelce, and Chris Jones.
Yeah, the Chiefs are talented. I mean, I think where the Eagles have them, and I agree, they're probably going to need to make some big plays. And it hasn't really been magnified because they've been winning by so much. Hurts has missed some passes that he was making at the beginning of the season. I don't know if it's injury related or rust or whatever. But I think the advantage that the Eagles have is that their offensive line's awesome. They have a fantastic offensive line. I think because of that, they're going to be able to run the ball. Their defensive line has been fantastic too. They get pressure on the quarterback like no other. So I think that's going to be a big thing too. I mean, with the Mahomes, and he has had a week off, which is fortunate.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, which is fortunate for the Chiefs. But well, yeah, that 1 week bye.
No, I know, but I mean, it's 2 weeks since he will have played.
Yeah, I think that's fortunate because if he wasn't as mobile in the pocket as he normally is, and that Eagles defensive line, I mean, they get pressure on the quarterback. Obviously, they knocked Purdy out of the game, but they're a nightmare for those quarterbacks. I mean, they're one of the all-time, you know, up there all-time in sacks in a single season. So yeah, they certainly bring it. I think if they can bring that pressure, it's going to be tough. I think it's going to be a good game, though. I think
it's going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a great game because actually, in theory, like that is a perfect combo. If Mahomes is feeling at least like 90%, like he's one of those quarterbacks that evades pressure, finds those plays off script, and can kind of make plays out of nothing. And we'll get into I have a couple prop plays. As I said, I'm playing devil's advocate, so I'm going to talk some Chief props because I know that you're going to have some Eagles props. So let's just get into that. Before we do any props, let's just hit the people with some first touchdown thoughts. First touchdown's the best. It's like a first-time leader bet.
It's the best.
It's over quickly, but there's nothing quite like hitting a first touchdown bet. So do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, the odds aren't great, I wouldn't say, but still, this is one of those where you almost like the juice aside, kind of just take who you like.
Yeah, you got to have some action on it. I mean, the odds, like you said, the odds aren't great. Initially, I looked at it. A name that stood out to me from the Eagles side, I kind of like Devontae Smith 11-1.
Okay.
It's weird because I feel like AJ Brown's kind of he's been a little bit quiet in the playoffs. I feel like he's due for a bigger game, but Devontae has Hurts loves Devontae, man. He gets a lot of targets. 11-1 feels like a pretty fair number on him. Him and Goddard are both at that 11 and 12 number that are intriguing. But I'm kind of feeling Devontae at 11-1. And then I think a sleeper option, if you want to go there, is for the Eagles at least is Kenneth Gainwell at 23-1. He's been getting a lot of action out of the backfield this playoffs, and he's been playing really well when he has got the ball. So that's definitely an interesting kind of 23-1. We bet a lot of first touchdown. I feel like he's got enough action where that probably deserves to be somewhere in the teens. Might be catching a bit of a number on that one.
Okay. All right. Early thoughts from me. Betting Chiefs first touchdown bets over the playoffs, like Travis Kelce is just a burner of all those bets. So I actually don't hate him at 6.5-1. I really don't. And then I feel like if you're going to bet Chiefs first touchdown, like you just pair him with Mahomes, hope that he doesn't actually as hobbled as people think he's going to be, which I'm kind of in the impression that with the week by 2 weeks since he's played last, he actually looked relatively mobile in the AFC Championship game. Obviously had that big run to kind of seal the deal. And 29-1 is pretty good when, all hell's breaking loose. Like it's a Super Bowl. I could easily see him scrambling for a touchdown. So I do like the Kelce and Mahomes combo there. And then from the Eagles, I do not hate that Gainwell call at all. So 23-1 on Gainwell feels pretty good.
All right, nice.
In terms of props, like I said, I'm going to talk Chiefs props. I think if the Chiefs are going to play well, they're going to need to run the ball pretty consistently. So I do like Pacheco over rushing yards, 48.5 is what I'm looking at. I don't hate that at all. He's kind of like we've seen pretty explosive plays out of him. I think if he breaks one for 15 once during the game, I think 48 is very achievable. If it's a close game, I think the running game is going to be pretty important from both teams. So I like that. And then going back to Kelce, 7.5 receptions. I just think Mahomes is going to be looking at Kelce pretty much all day, regardless of the coverage. And Kelce seems to find a way to just end up open, and regardless of what the defense is giving him. So I'm going to take Kelce over receptions and Pacheco over rushing yards.
Okay, I don't hate that. I'm going to take Gainwell over 19.5 rushing yards. Kind of touched on it with the first TD, but
wow, you're talking me into Gainwell here. I like this.
Yeah, his playoffs have been like really good. He had 112 rushing yards against the Giants, and granted, these are somewhat blowout games, and 48 yards against the Niners. The over/under is set at 19.5. That's kind of crazy. He's averaging, quick math in my head, close to 80 yards a game, and they have the over/under set 60 yards below it. So
that was good quick math there. I like that.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Hopefully it's correct. I think yes, I like that one. We talked about it before real quick. Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown feels it's like plus 110 or 105 right now, but it feels like almost like a lock. He's played 17 games. He has 15 rushing touchdowns, so that's almost once a game he's averaging one. So for plus money, that feels pretty good. And then if you're really getting dicey, I think if the Eagles are going to win this game, they're going to have to turn the Chiefs over at least one time. CJ Gardner-Johnson plus 630 for an interception. Had 6 on the year. I like it. I'm feeling it.
Wow. All right. That's what I'm talking about. That's a juicy kind of prop I'm talking about. I like that. Good call. All right. So that's it. Good luck to your Eagles.
Are you taking the birds?
I don't know if I'm going to bet the game either way. I think it's going to be a good game. I kind of want to be able to root for props. So maybe I'll take some Gainwell props. Maybe I'll take the interception prop with you, and then Kelce and Pacheco, and the first touchdown. So hopefully hit JT, waste management winner, roll it into Kenneth Gainwell first touchdown, and then we'll see what happens. So I love it. If you're still listening, it's been a long episode. It's a great week. Perfect time for football to roll into golf, and for Sunday, we get a great golf tournament that rolls into the pinnacle of the NFL season. So nothing better than that. It's a great week for sports. And as we mentioned, this is kind of like rolling into the heart of the golf season where we're going to have a lot of good golf courses on the docket. We're not far out from the Players. We're not far out from the Masters. So it's an exciting time. We appreciate you guys listening, and we'll talk to you next week.